Coming up on Nebraska Stories, adventures in mountain biking, an icon in fashion journalism, piecing memories through fabric and thread, and a small town keeps its promise.
I got my first mountain bike in 1983. This place, I didn't discover this until early 90s. It's really unique. It's got a little of everything, some rocks, it's got a few jumps, and it's true single track. It's an 18-inch wide ribbon of trail, no wider. Out here, you gotta be focused on riding when it's that narrow. That's part of the fun of riding. It clears your mind. You're focused on what you're doing. Or you crash, yeah. Or you get to see the trees.
Paul Sonksen likes to test his limits on the dirt.
That's partially why we do it. We like the adrenaline of pushing it a little bit. I know every route, every rock, you know, but that's what's unique about this place. I don't get bored. I ride it probably 3 times a week, 175 days a year.
Okay, mountain biking in Nebraska might sound like an oxymoron.
When I'm traveling and mountain biking, they ask me where I'm from. I say Nebraska, and that's first thing they say, there's mountains there? And I'm like, well, they're big hills. But when they actually come here, somebody that's from out of town, they're kind of shocked that we have some good riding around here, technical riding. This is a lot tighter single track than, say, Colorado or Utah, where that's almost 3 feet wide. So it kind of keeps them on their toes. They're not used to the trail being that tight and the trees being that close to you. It's an equalizer. We call it mountain biking because that's the type of bike we're using. A road bike has the skinny, slick tires. Here you need some knobbies to actually grip the dirt.
At Platte River State Park, even advanced riders struggle with the rock garden.
Oh! All right.
Dang it, I was gonna try
I said third time's the charm. Well, it's funny we're sitting here in the rock garden because earlier this year I actually wasn't paying attention close enough and I toppled over that root that's coming out of the tree right there, and I caught myself before I tumbled down that little ravine over there. Every single time I'm out here, it's really the peace of mind that I get from being out in nature. I really enjoy pushing my limits, and this is one of the most technical and steep trails that we have.
Woo! It's tight. I bet 80% of the racers will walk this. Makes a difference between a real good rider and a beginner, because they freak out. You can just see it when they come riding up. And they're just like, oh boy, here we go. I'm getting off my bike. So we always say wear comfortable shoes.
Doing a line that I've never done before. You know, coming slow speed down here trying to figure it out, and you turn your tire the wrong way and you end up, you know, falling over. It's just part of riding. There's, you know, there's 2 different kind of wrecks really. There's the high speed ones, and then there's the ones that usually happen in a spot like this where you're just rolling slowly over a rock and too late to do anything.
That did work.
Yeah, I've ridden this, I'd say 1,000 times in my life, and I still wreck on it. Yeah, it never stops.
Nice, there you go. It's not if, it's when. All of us have crashed. Every one of us, there's nobody that goes, oh, I've never crashed. Well, they haven't really ridden as hard as they could.
It is as dangerous as you make it. It's just all riding within your skill level is the most important thing.
And the trails change with the seasons.
This time of the year with the acorns down, it's dangerous for a while. It's like riding on marbles. And then you get into the fall with the leaves, they get slick and a little bit of moisture. They're like butter. As you're coming around the corner and there's a pile of acorns or a pile of leaves, and not much you can do but hang on or bail off your bike.
And there are other favorite spots.
It's a pretty area to go down to that waterfall. It's only about 4 feet tall. But when it freezes, it's 50, 60 feet wide. So it's pretty cool. The gully, and that has what's called the tooth gap. It's a rock formation that looks like a broken tooth that we like to jump off of. Butch's jump, because Butch built the jump and then broke his arm after he jumped it. Probably my favorite one right now is the trail I built a couple years ago. We call it Sykes Slingshot. One section is almost like you shot out of a cannon down a ravine.
These riders want to grow the sport, and they welcome anyone to these trails.
It's a small community of mountain bikers in Nebraska. And some people don't even know these trails exist out here. I do a Wednesday night ride. Anybody can come out, beginner or whatnot, and we will stay with them while they ride. Everybody's pretty friendly. You know, if I've got a beginner out here or somebody that doesn't know the trail,
Nice.
all of us will show them around.
Oh, you got a little tail whip.
And thanks to a federal grant, the trails at the park are expanding for riders at all levels.
They want to appeal to the mountain biker that might be traveling through here. They hope to make Platte River like a destination stop in between Chicago and Denver.
You know, from the plans that I saw, I'm excited about the progressive features.
Yep.
You know, and putting stuff out here that people back in Omaha and surrounding areas don't see.
Right.
Roxanne Fagan is a racer who uses these trails to practice for competitions across the country.
So they're called the tooth gap because somebody lost their tooth. I've been racing mountain bikes for maybe 15 years, but I've been in mountain biking for close to 20.
She's the women's national marathon champion in her age group and teaches new riders how to navigate the trails safely. She'd like to see more women try the sport.
I was absolutely intimidated, and it was scary, and I almost didn't continue with the sport. I kind of sucked at it, and I wasn't, very competitive. Finally got a bike that fit my riding style, and it turned everything around. We always tell people, walk what you can't ride, just, live to ride another day.
It'd be great if we'd see more women. There's not that many. It's a male-dominated sport, but that's why we do these group rides to get people out here.
For Fagan, it's been life-changing.
One of the reasons why I really like this sport, because it has a tendency to, I guess, bring out the badass in somebody. Like maybe they didn't know that they had in them in the first place. Bikes in general, I call them my magic carpets, because that's what they do. They take you places.
What describes a legend most? In this case, she is 5'3" when stretching, wisps of flaxen hair, ebony frames circling her eyes, the solid stance of a Nebraska cornhusker with shoulders that always set to support the weight of her chosen profession. Prose becomes poetry in her fashion critiques. Eye contact.
My name is Mary Lou Luther Imperato. I write under the name of Mary Lou Luther. I am a journalist, am a writer, and the creative director of the Fashion Group International.
Mary Lou Luther Imperato has traveled the world over to cover the fashion industry. Living in Chicago, Los Angeles, and now New York City, Mary Lou has never forgotten where she came from. For the past 87+ years of her life, Mary Lou has spent almost every summer back in her hometown of Cambridge, playing gin rummy with her best friend, Donna.
Okay, here we go again.
We've been playing gin together how many years, Mary Lou?
38.
Oh, she made that up, but I don't know. I don't remember.
Mary Lou will be the first to tell you that she has been fortunate to experience the best of life, but it wasn't always easy. As a teenager, Mary Lou grew up quickly due to the death of her father and an uncle in the same year, and then the death of one of her brothers in World War II.
When I went to college, I was 17. And I was reluctant to leave my mother, but she was the one who kept encouraging that I should go. Both my brothers graduated from the University of Nebraska, and she wanted me to as well. When I was a journalism major, you were taught that every story that you did should begin with who, what, why, when, and where, and sometimes how much or how many. We were trained to always present both sides of the story and let the reader decide what was right.
Graduating from UNL School of Journalism, Mary Lou started working, literally, the next day for the Lincoln Journal. Then, with a short stint at the Hastings Tribune, she moved to the Des Moines Register, which would change the course of Mary Lou's journalistic career and life.
The managing editor said, "You're going to be our new fashion editor." And I said, "Well, I can't. I don't know a thing about fashion." And he said, "You're going to learn."
Mary Lou learned all that she could about the business of fashion, and with her experience, moved on to become the fashion editor of the Chicago Tribune.
The Tribune would send me to Paris to cover the most major fashion event, probably of my lifetime, the Yves Saint Laurent show, his first for Christian Dior. He called his collection the Trapeze. The crowd waiting for him to appear on the balcony, to me, was proof positive of how important fashion was in Paris.
I think there is something very unique about her talent as a journalist, of course, and a writer. When you read her comments or you hear her speech, you completely get into a phase of a somewhat of beauty and culture, which is very rare today in our business.
As creative director of the Fashion Group International, Mary Lou writes and edits a trend report twice a year that gives a complete analysis of the world of fashion. Mary Lou has been honored with many prestigious awards, nationally and internationally by the fashion industry. In 1991, she was recognized by the Council of Fashion Designers of America.
I now know what it feels like to be in fashion heaven.
And her most recent award, the Fashion Group International Night of Stars Fashion Legend.
This is a total surprise. In traveling for the newspapers, I've been to London, Paris, Hong Kong, Australia, Tokyo, Milan, and Rome. In the United States, I've been to every major city.
In the 1970s, while working as the fashion editor for the Los Angeles Times, Mary Lou began writing her award-winning advice column, Clotheslines. It appears weekly online and in newsprint across the U.S., reaching over 5 million readers. It doesn't matter if she's in New York City or Cambridge, Mary Lou never stops working.
I enjoy answering questions from readers because they make me then know what is really important. I get about 100 emails a day for my clotheslines. Dear Mary Lou, Karl Lagerfeld has been quoted as saying that the original Chanel jacket came from a luggage man in Salzburg, Austria. You have written that the jacket, Dear K.I., Salzburg is located on the northern edge of the Alps, therefore alpine. My source for the Chanel jacket's provenance is the late New York design great Geoffrey Beene, who told me
she loves to come here every summer and see her friends and be part of the culture and just enjoy life.
I have to teach you how to back out of here, because you don't back out right. As Arthur would say, blow it out your marbles. I loved being back in the home I grew up in and all the memories. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. And I love coming back to see Donna.
Back in New York City, Mary Lou attends the fall and spring fashion shows, just like she did when she began as a journalist, and she has no plans of stopping.
No, no way. No, she will never retire. Why should she?
When people ask me, will I ever retire? I always say no. I love to write, but also I know that if I stop doing everything, I'm done.
She had a really strong sense of color and design, and she liked fabric. She enjoyed fabric. When we traveled, we always ended up in a fabric store. It didn't matter where we were.
The first thing I can remember noticing is how Olive used her hands in handling the fabric and working with the sewing machine.
The other noticeable characteristic was a loss of facility with speech. She was no longer able often to find the word, and she'd struggle to get it out.
In the fall of 2013, she said, I want to make a quilt. Will you help me? And, you know, in a heartbeat, of course I will, yes. When we did that one quilt, had no idea it was going to lead to 10 projects in 2 years.
Those skills she had with color and fabric and form seemed to be almost entirely unaffected by the disease. Even though she would find it hard to communicate an idea, she could still envision what it was she wanted to have happen with that fabric. It was her doing something that she was good at and continued to be good at, in spite of the fact that she was losing motor control and language. Until this exhibition, I had never seen them together like this. And so it's changed my perception a bit about how I feel about them. This one, it's called Olive's Butterflies, and there's a sense of the butterfly that is a good memory of Olive. I can easily think of her as a butterfly, brightly colored, flitting from this to that, absolutely free. It's sort of become my favorite now.
And that was one of the last quilts that we made together. By the end of our 2 years together, She was most content to just sit by the sewing machine, and I would do the stitching, and she would trim the threads off.
You tend sometimes to forget that inside that brain, there's a fully functional human being. It's just, there are kinds of expression that she can't achieve, and there are kinds of connections she can't make, but some of the things that are fundamental to her character remain undamaged.
And even if she wasn't able to use the sewing machine anymore, she always knew what colors she wanted to use next. And in fact, days before she died, she was pulling out yellows. That was going to be a next project. And as I looked back on that, of course, a few days later, I thought, you know, she was reaching toward sunshine, bright colors. And I just found that very significant.
Mm-hmm.
When she would lay out those last quilts, she didn't any longer know where to put the next piece.
I don't think in the last year that she could complete a sentence at all. She would hang up at some point, and sometimes she couldn't even get started.
She worked very hard, and in fact, something that she said a lot of times was, "I am trying so hard."
Yeah.
And she was. There's grieving going on when you see a person who has been highly skilled, very competent, slowly losing some of those skills.
She didn't lose those essential glimmers of personality that were uniquely hers. So in that sense, she was lucky, I think, with the way the disease treated her.
Mm-hmm. A takeaway message for me from all of this was to see the abilities that a person still has, or the interests that they still have. We went with what she could do.
We had that fire going at 5 o'clock this morning, and the soup is ready.
In a world of war and bad weather, we don't often hear stories like this. On a spring day, the people of Neligh, Nebraska, many descended from German pioneers, gathered together at the invitation of the Ponca and Omaha tribes, here to be thanked for keeping a promise. It's May 22nd, the anniversary of a death. We're at Neligh's Riverside Park, bounded by the Elkhorn River, swollen full after hard spring rains. In 1877, members of the Ponca tribe were exiled from their Nebraska homeland into a place called Indian Territory.
Picture this, 600 human beings coming through here, your community, this time of the year, 134 years ago. Their banks are full of water, and our people were forced through that water.
It was the spring that hundreds of Ponca people, men, women, and children, were forced to leave their Nebraska homeland and sent on a nightmare journey into Indian Territory.
They began in the early morning hours of May 19th to ford the Niobrara River and to begin moving the entire village, more or less on foot, from the Niobrara, Nebraska-South Dakota border to Oklahoma.
5 days into the 55-day journey, a baby girl died of pneumonia. Her father begged the people of Neligh to help bury his daughter and watch over her grave. The town carpenter made a cross, and they had a graveside ceremony. Decades later, the people of Neligh put up a granite stone, and they kept their promise. There are always flowers on the grave of White Buffalo Girl.
We Blaho, to all of you, thank you. We Blaho, thank you very, very much.
Members of the community receive a blessing.
The city, all that's near and dear to you. So we take a blessing home to them, all on behalf of this little girl here, and I'll say thank you.
Now it's time for a feast of corn soup and fry bread.
We are very honored by all of this. This is another chapter in which the young people are going to be able to experience. So much of this goes away with time.
It makes a person really feel good. It shows the commitment of our local citizenry through all of those years.
Laverne Hopman has never forgotten the words that were spoken at the dedication of the historical marker at Neligh's Laurel Hills Cemetery.
May the warm winds of heaven blow safely on this site, and may the Great Spirit bless all who have joined in these services.
To see more Nebraska stories, go to our website and like us on Facebook. Nebraska Stories is funded by the Margaret and Martha Thomas Foundation. Sustained funding for arts coverage on Nebraska Stories is provided by the H. Lee and Carol Gendler Charitable Fund.